Like way up and then way low. So right here, good? Sound good? Okay. Hi, everyone. I wasn't here last week. I was sick. Thank you for praying if you prayed. If you didn't, thank you anyway. It's fine. You might not have known, so I appreciate it. I feel much better. We're going to open up the service tonight with a reading from 1 Corinthians 13, but I'm going to start the verse right before that. So 1 Corinthians 12, the last verse of the chapter. And we'll start with that. I'm going to be reading from the Holmans. Is that good? Awesome. I'll give everyone a moment to pull that up. All right. So first Corinthians 12:31. But desire the greater gifts, and I will show you an even better way. If I speak human or angelic languages but do not love, I am a sounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so that I can move mountains, but do not love, I am nothing. And if I donate all my goods to feed the poor, and if I give my body in order to boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy, it is not boastful, it is not conceited, does not act improperly, is not selfish, is not provoked, and does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for languages, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put aside childish things. For now we see indistinctly, as in a mirror, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, as I am fully known. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Love it. It's great. I love that scripture so much. Every aspect of life you can tie to that scripture. You can look at anything in life through that lens. So, Heavenly Father, I just pray over our gathering tonight. I pray over the individuals that are here and that couldn't make it. They experience your deep, unifying, and changing love that gives them a place to change the world that they're involved in, to change their mind and their hearts. I just thank you for just giving it so freely and so boldly and unending. Pray over Pastor Jason and his teaching tonight, and that we connect with you in worship in a deep and loving way. In your Son's name I pray, amen.
You're welcome. One of the best scriptures in the Bible, one that's been distorted the most, but it's pretty good anyways. Usually it's distorted to benefit the person who's not healthy. But we're not going to talk about it tonight. I just needed one that would get us there and started. A couple things. Those of you who came Thursday, I want to say thank you, because it got uncomfortable, and I'm really proud of all the ones who made it through and without losing their control. That was pretty good. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Thursday we had an intentional argument, and it went really, really well. I was really proud of a lot of people. And probably something I don't give you guys enough credit for. You'll notice that the Republicans all left when I challenged them. They all skedaddled, tail between their legs, ran out the door because they didn't like what was being said. The progressives, on the other hand, at least you stay. You might fight, but you stay, and hopefully you're learning by now that politics has no place in Christianity. And if you're more dedicated to your politics than your Jesus, then you know your idol already. So we'll talk about that, though, because we need to talk about it, because politics, like racism, is like corn syrup. It's in everything. Can't get away from it. Much as I try, I can't. And it doesn't matter how much I've tried to teach people, there's a middle ground between the positions of bullies. People still take their bully position. And in case you don't know, whoever's in power, whoever's been elected to office, typically their following is the bullies. Before it was Trump, now it's Biden. And we have to learn how to have these discussions because they're going to come up. And so what I thought we would do is talk about brave communication, because we haven't actually taught on it in a while. A couple of things from the discussion last week, or Thursday. Chris, I just wanted to point out one thing. You did great. You'll note that I never disagreed with you when you said the word was wrong or bad. I never disagreed with you once that it was a bad word. What I disagree with is it's a word, and nobody should crumble over a word. If you know who you are and you have an identity, words cannot hurt you unless you let them hurt you, and that suggests that you believe there's something wrong with you. Part of Christianity is it makes us whole, regardless of what struggle we have in our regular world life. And so it shouldn't matter outside of yourself what someone says if you know who you are. It's one of the things Jesus healed us from. And it's a good position to know where you're at in your healing, actually. Words are just words. And I know that there are generations who brought up differently, and I can accept that. What I cannot accept is being told by a generation that's significantly younger than me how I'm supposed to talk. And I swear to you, I hope I'm around when y'all are my age, and the next generation tells you how to think and you how to speak and tells you that they know better than you do. I hope I'm there for it, because I will laugh and enjoy every second of it. Because you're going to have to learn how to talk to them. You're going to have to learn how to tell them if they're being rude, if they're being mean, if in their agenda they're doing exactly what they're accusing other people of doing. You don't see this in Jesus. People want to use Jesus to back their claims or to back their positions or to back the way that they present it. Jesus did it differently than anybody I've ever seen. I've yet to see a human being do it that way, yet when Jesus did it, it was as human. And so I think we need to have that discussion, because right now it's just gas stoves and electric cars and a whole bunch of other stuff that's just stupid. But we're still taking our position, somehow thinking that's important. Or you have the opposite problem, which to me is a worse problem. You've buried your head in the sand to avoid it. Let it be somebody else's problem. You have stewardship over the world, my friends. As believers, that's what was handed to you, is stewardship. And so, right or wrong, it's for us to do something about. The struggle is we're doing it the way the world's doing it, not the way Jesus did it. So I'm hoping that we can come to some good discussion points. This one is open to discussion. So by all means, if you don't get something or you find something challenging, this would be a great time to say that, because we can talk through it. I want to tell you that communication is a learned skill. It is not something your parents probably taught you well, not unintentionally. It's just parents don't always teach their children communication well. It's more like, don't do what I do, just do what I say. Or why? Because, that sort of thing. It's very rare that you meet the parent that actually sits down and intentionally has discussion with the children to explain cause and effect or behavior, any of that stuff. And the more children you have, the more difficult that becomes. I think it's really healthy to sit down and give your child the option for discussion. It starts right there, right in the home. Is it always easy when you got 1,001 other things going on? No, it's not. But at the end of the day, if you really are for your children, then you'll realize that the dishes don't come before them. A mess doesn't come before them. I would say even sometimes your boss doesn't come before them. Your boss is calling you at home, work's bothering you on the phone. It can wait. You came looking for a job, you can leave looking for another one. But you'll only have one shot with your children. And that is it. And they grow up and rebel against you to the rest of the world or people who are your age. It's really quite fun. So we set them up ahead of time first. Teach them. You want to have a better planet? Create better children. Healthier children. They'll leave you a better world. That's how it works. The goal should be in our communications is that you as a human being, as a mature, healthy, well-balanced, adjusted individual, complete and whole because you're the Lord and Savior inside of you and you're following all this stuff, we're assuming that that's already here. We're assuming that that's where you are in your walk with the Lord. Let's just assume. That you're able to know and take responsibility for what you mean to say and how you say it, and that you understand what you hear. Most of the time, we're too busy waiting to rebuttal what we don't like, or we're too busy listening with an intent to respond or reply as opposed to understand. That's 90% of communication dysfunction, is people hear in a different way than it's presented. And so you almost have to take a step back. Ask as many questions as you possibly can. Don't be afraid. If there is disagreement, give space for that, because the only thing you control on a good day is what? You. And either you are or you aren't. And either your position is so important to you that you'll risk relationships, or the relationship's more important than your opinion, because that's all it is. How you say it and how you understand it matters. Are you responsible for how a person hears it? If you've presented it to the best of your ability, if you've repeated it, if you've reinforced it, no, you're not responsible for them. Your responsibility comes in speaking in a way that can be easily understood, in a way of love and acceptance. And sometimes love isn't always warm and cushy. I actually have, and I wasn't going to do it because it would become something more, but maybe next Thursday. All the areas in the Bible where Jesus was not the warm fuzzy. Because people have made up a fake Jesus that didn't exist, and where he didn't correct, or he didn't say it like it was, or he didn't have a problem with sin when he did. And so we'll talk about that, because it's nice to have this fake hippie Jesus in your head who wears purple and just walks around healing people and saying, oh, everybody's fine, everything's fine, don't worry about it, you're all going to heaven. Of course, that never happened. And so if that's what you think, if that's what you choose to believe, you're following a false God, a fake Jesus. That will never get anybody healthy, nor you. You'll just continually find ways for Jesus to hate the same people you hate, or to only agree with you and disagree with everybody else. It's hard to have a conversation with someone who comes from that position. And so you yourself must not be the one coming from that position if you want to have a healthy conversation. Other people may, you shouldn't. There's lots of communication styles, and I'm not going to address all of them exactly or directly, but things like body language matters. When you snicker at somebody or smile snarky to yourself when they're talking, you've totally bombed your conversation. Nobody will trust you or feel safe around you to show you who they really are. If you have a nervous laugh, get it under control. But when you sit in a superior manner to people, you don't make them feel safe. And if that's your objective, it's going to fail. If your objective is to get your point across and be right, then by all means continue. But in a healthy, brave communication style, it doesn't work. Brave communication, I should add at this point, is more listening than talking, by the way. Hearing what isn't said, what's between the lines of being said, why someone's motivated, why they say what they say. B, we need to be good communication, and that's an expression of the fruit of self-control. And what that means is, you manage you. Somebody else can be losing their crap, and if you want to get somewhere, you can lose your crap, butt heads. I have a style that I would rather just irritate the crap out of somebody to find out what they really mean, because I also know that when I'm around certain personality types, they lie unintentionally. If I'm talking to Matt, I'm only going to give Matt facts, because Matt could really care less my opinion, my feelings, or anything. If I'm talking to a D, I get right to the point. I don't fluff it. I don't tell them my emotions. I don't tell them how I feel, because they don't care. They want me to get to the bottom line, because that's what matters to a D. If I'm talking to an I mainly just listen, because they talk enough for both of us. If I'm talking to an S, I tend to poke the bear a lot, because the S's will speak unintentionally from a position of a lie. They don't know they're doing it, so please, my S friends, do not be upset that I'm saying that. What I mean by that is you'll respond the way you wish somebody was talking to you, which means it's not honest. You don't give the other person the opportunity to experience things their way. It feels nice, it feels honorable, it feels like a good thing, but it's good for you. And it might only be you in the conversation that comes from that position. And so the truth, unvarnished, typically is the best way to communicate. How you do that, though, is what we're going to talk about in communication styles. I like Danny Silk said this, I have the freedom to tell myself what to do and to make myself do it. He's speaking from the position of a healthy, well-balanced Christian who has their mental illness in check, their emotional illnesses in check, and is coming from a position of faith and trust in the Lord, not hurt, pain, offense, and waiting for the next person to upset them. Danny Silk also said, I don't control others, but on a good day, I can control myself, manage myself in the presence of others. That's Danny Silk. Now, if you're not in a place where you know how to manage yourself right, and the fruit of self-control is not living and active in you, then it's okay to excuse yourself from a conversation if you've been disrespectful or you feel disrespected. It's actually a healthy boundary to set up. It says, but it's better to communicate it than to storm out huffing like a child with a temper tantrum. It's better just to say, I'm not comfortable right now, so I'm going to excuse myself for a second, and I need to manage me for a second. That's how a healthy, mature adult handles it. And an equally healthy, mature adult should be, oh, yeah, I get that, okay. By all means, go manage yourself. Come on back to the table. Core attitudes and behaviors in brave communication or good communication. First one is love, which is why we read that scripture. All these skills function best when love is in play. Now you're like, most people, when I say that, typically when I've taught that in classes, they've been like, well, yeah, it has to be directed at love towards me. It's not what I mean. I mean, 1, you need to know you're loved. 2, in Christ, you need to feel loved. And 3, it's you that gives the love out. And you can only do the third one if the other 2 are in play in a healthy, sustainable manner. Next one is negotiation, because it's normal in crisis and conflict, and it leads to deeper relationships. You should be able to negotiate your point, ask healthy questions. Well, why do you feel that way? I can't do it because the camera's on. On Thursday, I used a word that apparently upset a certain generation, but no one asked me why I say that word. No one asked, why do you mean that? They just told me how offensive it was and how wrong I was. Let me help you with that one. All you've done is create an enemy. You didn't make your position clear. You didn't give explanation. You just got mad or got offended and chastised me rather than ask me why. That was intentional on my part because I know I'd be teaching this. You want to know where people are at? Upset them, ruffle their feathers. In fact, I think it's the Hawaiians who have this great saying, you don't know who a person really is until you hang them over a volcano. It turns out to be true. You don't even know who you are until you're the one hanging over the volcano. But then once you do, you get to see the things that need worked on. That's not a bad thing. The problem is we've been told we're fine just the way we are. You're accepted just the way you are. But God perfects you. He enhances you. He brings the best out of you. You're the only roadblock to that. Not life, not a situation, not experiences around you. You get to make a choice. I either hold on to the things that are toxic but feel comfortable to me, or I let them go so that I can become better and become the person that God created to be, not life circumstances created. Does that make sense? Okay. Am I moving too fast? Are we good? Okay. If you want to have a good, deeper relationship, then each of you must listen better than you're speaking. Not to prove your point, but to understand. Tons of questions. And I said this the other night. Questions are going to make people uncomfortable. I usually upset people because I ask questions. That's a good way to know they don't really know what they believe. They might recite something, maybe deep inside them they say, yes, this is a good thing, but that's it. It's a very face value belief system. It can be easily ruffled. It can be easily dismantled. If that's the case, then they probably don't know what they believe, and you shouldn't press further than that because that will make someone feel insignificant, insecure, and they'll get upset. And this is just basic communication styles and skills. Someone who knows who they are, you can't ruffle them. Someone who knows why they believe and what they believe, you can't ruffle it. You can't ruffle them on that. Now, here's part of the conundrum politically, and we're just going to talk about it because we do have a lot of political differences within the church. Typically, and notice I said typically, not this is how it is across the board. So before anybody gets offended by this, I said typically, not a broad generalization in its entirety. Republicans know one iota from beginning to end exactly what they believe and why they believe it. And they are either all in or I'm not voting this election. Whereas progressives tend to be excited about maybe 5 things and could give a rat's butt of the collateral damage of the rest of it, as long as those things are done. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 1, whatever. Neither one's good or bad necessarily, but we sometimes don't come from the same position. And so a Republican looks at you like you're a complete moron because you're championing the one cause. And they're like, yeah, but what about all the byproducts of that one cause? What about all the stupid things that are going to happen that we're all going to have to endure? You do not think about that. It doesn't matter because the one agenda point's going to get met. Whereas Republicans, you'll note the division in the Republican Party was because they couldn't even talk to each other. Half of them were like, Trump is sent by God to change the world. And most of us are like, yeah, I don't think so. He can use anybody. If he used Nebuchadnezzar, he could use Joe Biden if Joe Biden let him. He could use anybody. And so to say, call out prophetically, which apparently either God was wrong or the prophets were wrong, because we know he's not in the office. So either that arrogance gets repented for, or you'll continue to disconnect with the people you should be reaching. Now, most of you were here during that time. You know how I felt about it, and I still feel the same way about it. And then you have the other group of Republicans who are like, I just want to be left alone. I want to be able to own what I want to own, make sure I can pay my bills, and my kids can go to college. And that's simply all they want. And those people are being told they're white supremacists and colonizers, and they think that's going to help reach anybody. It doesn't. It creates an enemy that you didn't have, but you made it. And so we're not talking to, we're talking at. You can't sit in moral judgment or moral superiority above a group of people and think that that's literally repeating the cycle that you're claiming has already been done. And please hear me, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're Christian first, hopefully. And if you're not, you know that by how you argue. I know that by how you argue. That's why I like to do it. I like to find out who people are just by ruffling a little feathers. And I'm glad you finally figured that out. In all of your conversations, whether it's with family, with friends, with other Christians, with people you work with, people out in the world, I want you to think this one thought. Win-win. How does this become a win-win scenario? I disagree. Randy tells me that, I don't know, toilets are racist. Let's just say. Because they're all white, right. You can get a black one now.
I have a black toilet.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. I wish I had one. That must be easier to keep clean, too, right? No, maybe?
You don't even notice.
I'm a little jelly. But let's just say, hypothetically, Randy comes up with this thing about how colonizers created toilets to enslave people, butts to a seat. I don't know, whatever. Let's just say, and me as someone who leans a little to the right is like, that's just insane. So how are we going to have a conversation where we both see eye to eye? Here's a good one. You may not. But in that scenario, it might be good to say, okay, Randy, I hear what you're saying, but can you tell me the history of that? Where does that come from? Where did you hear that from? I really want to understand, because I like my toilet. I don't want to have an outhouse. I like being able to do it right in the convenience of my house. Right. So Randy's like, well, in case you didn't know, England is where it started. And I was like, really? How did it start in England? Well, that's where the first toilets came, and then they colonized a whole bunch of countries and conquered those people, and that's just inherently racist. And me as someone on the right is going to look at him like he's like literally insane. Why do you prefer outhouses? Why, do you like outhouses? All right. So, hey, I don't have any outside judgment on that whatsoever. And so Randy and I sit down and talk about it, and we realize at the end of this conversation, we're just not going to see eye to eye. So how does that become a win-win, do you think? It comes into a win-win when I say, you know what, I love you and I respect you, and I don't have to understand or agree with that to love you. And if you say that, and it's still not enough, you've created a win-win for you that you will never create a win-win for them. But in a mature, healthy relationship, Randy would say, you know what, I don't get how you don't see this, but I love you too. And maybe in the future we'll figure it out. And so you park it there. I don't then go to AJ and go, this guy is insane, man. He thinks toilets are racist. Of course, in church we tag on, we need to pray for him. Nothing about that scenario is healthy. What is healthy is just simply finding a place where we do have agreement, which is, hey, I love you. I love you too. And it should be able to end there. Now, a mature person knows this. Someone who's been taught communication knows this. Unhealthy people don't. They run. When they're challenged, they run when they're offended, and they usually try to get people to their side. If someone tries to get you to their side, here's my encouragement to you. Find out who the beef is with and say, oh, Randy, you had a problem with David? Let's go talk to David about it. But that's how you handle it. You want a win-win? There's your win-win. Somebody was misunderstood. Somebody was hurt. You be like Switzerland used to be. And you say, how can I get you back in a relationship here today? That's how it should be handled. When it's a win-win situation, both are powerful. When it's a win-lose, you must see my viewpoint or we're going to fight about it. If you don't agree to this one thing, you're wrong. That's called I win, you lose. It's a position of arrogance and moral superiority that ultimately destroys relationships. Lose-win is worse. I'm a victim because you didn't understand me. I'm a victim because you disagreed with me. Oh my gosh, you don't hear me. Well, I would argue you probably didn't hear them either. Toilets. Lose-lose. I'll just destroy the whole thing. This is the position I used to take. And it ultimately destroys a lot of relationships. Like, if you don't disagree with me, I'm either going to ignore you, beat you down verbally, and I'm okay if it steps into fist fight. This is what an immature person does. This is what a toxic person does. This is what someone who needs a lot of help does. Stephen, that's obviously I'm copying from Stephen Covey. This is also a Stephen Covey quote. This one I have written down in a lot of different places because it helps me remember. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Stephen R. Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It is my second Bible. I encourage you all to read it. You would probably deal with me a lot more when you realize that's 90% of my responses come from that book. Some good things to do is say, please help me understand why you come from that place. What's going on with you? Are you okay? Is something off? Did I say something that bothered you? I'm really confused. Can you help me understand why you think that? If things go crazy, I encourage you to go, oh, what just happened? Like someone starts losing their crap, you can either do one of two things. Are you good? Or what is going on? I play stupid so well, most people don't even know what's happening. I just literally go, well, what happened? Did I do something wrong? I'm sorry, did I say something? Clearly I did, because body language and behavior has changed, voice has changed. But it's okay to give somebody the moment of reflection to honor them by saying, I'm not sure what's going on right now. This gives them the ability to think, is it worth the fight? Have I lost control? Does this person actually see me? In healthy, brave communication, it's not about getting your point across. It's not about being right. It is always in preference of the other person's heart so that you can understand where they come from. Questions? I should also tell you, for those who didn't figure it out on Thursday, I was on debating, and I like to debate quite well. It's one of my favorite things in the world is to have a good argument. It's kind of hard to do it when it's in church because you got to put these things in. If you're trying to have just a basic conversation and someone goes crazy because you said the wrong thing, you're like, oh, people who think that China's a conspiracy are lunatics, and they lose their stuff. You were just joking around. You just assumed that everybody else on the planet also thought the same thing. You didn't mean it as a personal attack on them. But they are so ingrained in whatever crazy political thing they believe on either side that they don't care. You offended them because you don't think the way they do. And in politics, by the way, the spirit of politics is the same exact spirit that crucified Jesus on the cross. And it should not go without note. It wasn't religion, it was the spirit of politics. Research it. That's what killed Jesus. That's what killed our Savior. That's what kills families. That's what kills friendships. The principalities, rulers of darkness, evil, spiritual wickedness in high places, all that stuff is government. It's politics. What do you pay your bills to? A what? What kind of pality? municipality. And a municipality falls on the jurisdiction of a what? Right. We don't use those words often anymore. We just say local government, state government, federal government. But nonetheless, none of that was established by God. The Constitution of the United States presupposes that we were a Christian nation and upheld the fruits of the Spirit. And because we don't, because we have moral issues in our country, it is not a God country. You can tell that by how we treat each other, how we treat the poor, how we treat babies, how we treat the elderly, how we treat people we disagree with. And Christians are the ones who are empowered to have healthy, fruitful conversations. Does that mean you're not going to have disagreements? No, no, no. Does that mean you're not going to have arguments? No, no, no. Does that mean you're not going to get mad, hurt, frustrated, or offended? No, it just means you don't stay there. It means you grow up, be a mature adult, and you have a discussion. You can pick up your toys, run and hide, and go play with people who agree with you, but at the end of the day, that's not family, friendship, or relationship. It's camaraderie, which is the lowest form of covenant. And once the person that you disagree with is gone, that friendship's over. Your commonality was bonded in who you were against, not who you were for. How am I doing so far? Good. Connect first, then give content if needed. Most often, the first step in connecting is let content come after. In other words, they're frustrated because you said people are lunatics for thinking China is a conspiracy. They're like, what are you, crazy? How can you not see what's right in front of your eyes? Blah, 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 blah. Let them get it off their chest. Usually, in a healthy, stable person, that's enough. And they calm down because they realize, I must look like a complete lunatic right now. Have you ever been there? You're in the middle of like, Rah! And you kind of step outside yourself and you're like, ooh, that's ugly. Or worse, you catch yourself in the mirror in the midst of that, that face you got when you're mad. The content doesn't matter at that point. Honoring the person that's losing their crap does. Grounding people does. Grounding yourself in that moment does. If someone gets that upset, guaranteed there's a reason they're that upset. Guaranteed it's personal. Guaranteed that if you dig a little deeper, they'll probably tell you about it, because if there's one person that people love to talk about, generally it's themselves. And the right questions opens doors. The wrong statements shuts them all down permanently sometimes. The next part is going to be choosing our words and speaking in code. We have communication issues geographically, demographically, and generationally. Democrats and Republicans have two different dictionaries for same words. Racism would be an easy one. If you say something to someone who's progressive, they think systemic, systems that created racism and how unfair it is to all the people who've been marginalized. If you say it to a Republican, they're like hate speech. Which is why it's funny when liberals are telling Republicans how their speech is offensive. We already know that. We know what speech is offensive. And from our position, the Democrats don't, because they are okay to use it on the people they hate, but not on the people they've selected. Whereas Republicans, it's kind of like a free-for-all, where you just don't do it. Morally, they tend to have a stronger moral compass on the Republican side because most of them go to church, and so there's certain things they won't say at all. And then there's other ones who are just playing a game. I don't have a place for the lukewarm people. I don't know what to say about that. But, so when we have this evolution of words because of certain parties in power, certain words that were acceptable for 30 or 40 years, now suddenly you're told you can't say, it's a hard pill to swallow. It would be like if, let's say, 20 years from now, I told people on the left that you can't say the word racism anymore. You can't say racist. It's too offensive. It would be a hard pill to swallow, considering 80% of content's about racism on the left right now. Imagine a younger generation coming up to you and telling you that you're wrong and that you're rude and you're offensive. What would you do? Would you disagree? Would you fight? Would you argue? Or would you say, why? Explain it to me. Win-win. Healthy. Find content. Don't be frustrated. The only one that I think you can laugh at personally in regards to some of the statements that have been made the last 4 years is the whole nanite in your food thing. By all means. Make fun of that one. What? Corn syrup? Corn syrup's in everything. Everything. Well, they're killing you, but just how you eat. Look at the new food pyramid. Supposedly now, I'm not even going to get into it. No, but sugar is. And eggs and cheese and anything that's not vegan is at the bottom because it's so unhealthy for you. But go ahead and eat frosted mini wheats all day. That's good for you. Little Lucky Charms helps the blood. It does. Especially if you like diabetes, that's good. But that's all right. That's all right. But see, this is what we're talking about. Yes. I mean, have you ever watched the videos where people eat Lucky Charms or Fruity Pebbles or something from Ireland or England and have never experienced American breakfast before? It's horrible. And it's disgusting, yes. And once you're off sugar, for those of you who've dropped the sugar thing, you already know what I'm talking about. When you go eat something that's really sweet, like people are really nice, and they're like, here, let me give you this dessert that has 100,000 calories in it. And you eat it, and it's like, oh my God, why is there so much sugar in this? But unless you're in a position, I don't know. I was like, he's definitely going off the rails. People often say it's not what you said, it's the way you say it. This is actually only a half-truth, but it's both what we say and how we say it. In other words, it's not like how many of you have dogs? You got 2? Is that what you said? Or 1? All right. Have you ever gone up to your dog and go, you suck! I can't stand you! You're such a stupid dog! Oh my gosh, I wish you were dead. Try it. You know what the dog will do? Oh my gosh, you're so excited. Butt's moving 1,000 miles a minute. But if you go up to that same dog and go, I love you! You're the best dog in the whole wide world. That dog is confused. It's no different with people. It really isn't. It's not just what you say, it is how you say it. They're both important. You need to pick not only your vernacular, but your tone. And I'm not going to get into the body language stuff. I really wish I could, but not tonight. That would take too long. Everybody's got a code book they think is standard use. Let me help you out with that. Your code book is your code book and nobody else's. Even in your family, how many of you come from big families? How many of you have the same code book? Now, my brother and I have tried to have conversations, and it's like we're speaking 2 totally different languages, and we grew up 5 years apart. Like, the same situation in our family has occurred. We have a discussion about it. It's like 2 different people experience 2 totally different scenarios. You're the only one who thinks the way you do and who talks the way you do. There might be elements in your family of it, sure, nuances. But at the end of the day, you're the only one that's like you. Even in twins. How many twins we got in here? We got David and we got Anita. And you. Well, you and your twin are nothing alike. I've met him, and I'll tell you this, I forget that you have a twin. That's how different you are. Which is weird because most of the McFarlanes that I have met are fairly similar, except for the 2 other brothers. The one with the hat, and then your twin. Your twin's like a playa. Yeah, there you go. Anita, your twin, and you were like night and day. Not even the same. Do you have the twin language, though? I think David and his brother have the weird twin language. Tony is a twin. Him and his brother are completely different. Even in families, there's a different code book. And you're just not going to find a person with the same one. No one understands that, but people sure like to judge your code book. But here's what I'm going to say. Don't judge another person's code book. There are some body languages that are very natural to certain areas of Pennsylvania. They come off as arrogant, though, and you shut people down. And in your code book, it's normal. In other countries, they have a similar thing, like we shrug our shoulders. If you go to India, they go, which is like this. And in Central PA, I've noticed smirks. When you disagree with somebody, you openly disagree, but you keep it to yourself. Oh my God, it is so offensive to anybody who comes from a different part of the country. I would encourage you, if you want to be a good communicator, eliminate that. If you're going to smirk, do it on the inside. If you're going to be an asshole, then keep it to yourself. If you can't be nice, shut up. If you can't engage in a healthy manner, then probably you shouldn't. Or at the very least, start to catch yourself. You cannot say you're not aware at this point now. In Boston, we have several that I've only recently have been told are pretty offensive. Like, what do you care? Which basically means, why is this important to you? I don't understand. Explain it to me. But we'll just say, what do you care? You know? There's a whole bunch of them, but they're just, in Boston, they're normal. If someone comes up to you and says that, you're not hurt or offended by it. You go, oh, because, and you give an explanation. Why? Because geographically, that's how you talk. And if I'm engaging with people who aren't from New England, the worst thing I can say to some of you is, what do you care? And that's literally how I would say it. Like, that's stupid. And the way it comes off is, you're stupid. Why are you butting into my business? Mind your own effing business. But that's not what it's meant at all. It's more like, why is that important to you? But unless you're from New England, you wouldn't know that. Generationally, and I'll use the word that was said, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody on the camera, and I apologize. Matt, don't grimace yet. I got 6 more weeks that I could do this. That's it. All right. For the children, I apologize. For the parents, I apologize. Growing up as an X-Gen, the word faggot was not allowed. We weren't allowed to say that word. We would get in a lot of trouble. You get your ass handed to you by your parents if you said that word. Fag, on the other hand, meant wimp, cowardly. It was something, if you're in sports in particular, or in the service or what have you, if David and I are trying to climb a hill and Dave can't make it and I see he's struggling, I good-naturedly would shoulder him and go, come on, you fag, you can do this. And it says, we're in this together. We're going to tackle this thing. Nothing's going to stop us. And I love you. I know you can do this. Different generation, so I get it. And you guys think it's a shortened word for a derogatory word that we would have got spanked for even saying. We still got spanked back then, by the way. Or worse, had your mouth washed out with soap. God, I hated that. But because of the evolution of time, apparently some things have changed. And I was unaware of that until he said something in the midst of it, and then Matt explained it to me. But there are 2 separate words for us. We didn't shorten the one word so that we could say it. Oh, that's just weird. We literally had 2 separate meanings for 2 separate words. One means coward. The other one you don't say. And that's another thing that y'all need to think about. Like, you're accusing us of doing things that we weren't allowed to do. So I don't know where you come up with it sometimes. In the 80s, you got spanked still. Some people don't anymore. I know, right? The ruler? Did you guys, did they use the...
They had a paddle at my Catholic school. And if
Oh, I'm sorry.
the transgression was severe enough, you actually got paddled.
We were not taught, and just helpful hints for you guys who don't know anything about the X-Gens, nowhere in the world were we told, be a racist. It's okay. Everybody else is doing it, quite the opposite. Right. And I know you don't know that because you believe what's popular and what you're being told, but you should ask us sometimes how we were raised. Because we were raised with morals with a strict hand. But you make a lot of assumptions about that shuts down communication, therefore you can't teach us anything. Because you're not going to be able to reach us. Because you morally sit above us somehow, you think. That's not how it works. And Republicans, when your time, because it's going to happen, when your time is in vogue, you need to be sensitive to the fears that Democrats have when they see the world going into a more strict posture. Ask the millennials or the Z-Gens or the baby boomers that are on that side. Ask them why. Why is this so important to you? Please explain it to me. If we begin to ask the motivations, not the particulars, we might get somewhere. Why is this so important to you? Why is this your hill to die on? Because to me, it seems like a ridiculous hill to die on. It's okay to say that to somebody. If you really care about them, you want to know. Now imagine how it goes into friendships. Dominic and I are friends. He says something that upsets me or he lies to me, and I tell him straight out, you need to fix that or we're not going to hang out anymore. What should be the next thing that happens? If the friendship's important, he'll fix it, right? If his feelings are important, he'll just get mad and find other people who hate me, and they'll join their cause together. This is how immature people do stuff. And know this. Like, just know this is what maturity looks like and healthy looks like. This is what immaturity looks like. Where do you find yourself in that? Because if you find yourself on the side that isn't healthy, isn't mature, that's okay. But until we acknowledge it and work on it, you can't move forward into a place of maturity. You'll just continually surround yourself with people who give you attaboys and tell you, yeah, I agree with you. You're right. If everybody around you agrees with you, they're not your friends. They're your comrades. And if you want to be a Marxist and you like that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, we're supposed to be Christian, not Republican, not Democrat, not socialist, not capitalist. Human beings created in the image of God. We should speak to one another that way, question one another that way, honor one another that way. If I set a boundary up with Dominic instead of a wall, see, here's how another way it could go down. F you, don't ever come near me again. If I see you near me, I'm going to beat your ass. And I mean it. And I walk away. And the next time I see him, I start it with him. That's a wall. That's, in my opinion, what cowards do. Mature, healthy people set a boundary and say, here's where I'll meet you. Just come to there. And if you come there, I'll see how important this relationship is. What you did was wrong. I'm so sorry that you don't see that right now, but I hope you do in the future. And they don't tell other people about it. They go face to face. And then if you do that with somebody, if you set a boundary with somebody, you sit back and you wait and see what they do with the boundary. That's all. But you forgive them. You go in the process of forgiving. Think of questions. When you do finally have conversations, say, why did this even happen? Like, can you explain to me why you said what you said or why you did what you did so that I can find in my heart a place to meet you at? Like, we don't talk to one another this way, but we really should. And there was a time when people knew how to do this, and we're going to bring it back. Everybody's got a code book. I just said that. Check out one of the ways you can dismantle code book confusion is, let's say that David does say something to me that's only in his code book. I don't understand it, or worse, I'm misunderstanding it. One of the ways to diffuse those situations is if you're the one with the code book that someone misunderstood, they've gotten offended, they've gotten upset, you can say, hey, I'm wondering if you misunderstood. I'm wondering if we're coming at this from a different position. I wonder if we're seeing different sides of the same problem. However you do it, by making that preference after the time has exploded, by saying, I wonder if, you're now giving that other person and yourself the ability to take a slight step back and kind of figure out what's the problem here, and then continue. Any questions? But what we typically do is, because someone misunderstood our code book, we get suspicious of their motives. It's normal, it's human, almost everybody does it. And in our imagination, we come up with reasons for why they said what they said. We come to our own conclusions. We start to think things about them that probably aren't true. And when you're in doubt, I would encourage you to open your thought process to the other person. When these things happen to me, it's not that I'm mad at you. It's just that I feel anxious. I feel confused, and I don't know how to always respond when I'm in that mode. So if we have these hard conversations and I'm in that mode, would it be okay if I just get a second when I feel this way? If I let you know, is that okay? And the other person should hopefully respond with, yeah, of course, I have those moments too. And I would love the same type of respect. And if we get into a disagreement, I'll be more than happy to give you your time if you give me mine. It's also good to tell someone, hey, I see that our connection is beginning to waver. I don't want that to happen, so how about we pick this up later? Would it be better for you if maybe we meet sometime this week for coffee in a different situation? What does that do? It gives you the ability to consider what was said on both sides. Both you should not think about what they said to me. You should think about, how did I present my thoughts? Did I present it in a way that they could hear what I said? If it's all about how they responded to you, you've now found your problem, because you've made it about you, not about connection. We good? Let me give you some scriptural ideas about communication, rebuke, repent, and forgiveness. By the way, communication difficulties can be resolved thusly. Hey, you know when you said that thing about the toilet and I didn't get it, I want to apologize if I hurt your feelings for anything I said. I just didn't fully understand. So please, please forgive me. I know sometimes I can come off bad when I'm irritated. And if he's like, yes, great. If he's like, I need a couple weeks to get over this, then you be, I understand. But please, please let me know when it's time, because I miss you already. Something, however your vernacular works. Okay, here we go. A fool shows his annoyance at once, but a prudent man overlooks an insult. Proverbs 12:16. By the way, I totally stole this from Bethel. This was the class I took. And I'm just giving it to you. I did not write this. Nobody can be upset with me. It comes in a pre-generated outline that I did not write. This has nothing to do with Thursday or any other day, okay? Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Proverbs 12:18. A fool's talks brings a rod to his back, but the lips of the wise protect them. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Both Proverbs, sorry. The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Proverbs 15:4. A man finds joy in the giving of an apt reply, and how good is a timely word. Proverbs 15:23. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. Ooh. Hold on, just be patient with me. I'm a professional. Not really. All right, here we go. Pleasant words are like honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. This is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to his own death. Proverbs 16:24-25. A man of knowledge uses words with restraint, but a man of understanding is even-tempered. Proverbs 17:27. From the fruit of the mouth, a man's stomach is filled, but the harvest of his lips, he is satisfied. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Proverbs 18:20-21. He who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself from calamity. Proverbs 21:23. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. Let me say that again. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. Through patience, a ruler can be persuaded, but a gentle tongue can break a bone. Proverbs 25:15. You brood of vipers! How can you, who are evil, say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Who's Jesus talking to? Pharisees, right. But the things, and you know what's funny is people go, yeah, because they were religious. No, it's because they were political. That's their job was to be religious. Study your history. It has nothing to do with their religiosity and everything to do with their politics that perverted their religion. Do a history study. But the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these make a man unclean. Matthew 15:18. Instead of speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into him who is the head, that is Christ. Ephesians 4:15. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only that which is helpful for building of others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. This one I almost was like going to argue about with Dan Farrell, but I didn't, because it's a situational counsel about a specific thing. And one thing I hate is when people take Paul's specific counsel to a small group of people about a specific thing and make it broad spectrum counsel. It's a distortion of Scripture. I won't do it. And if you look it up, he's talking to the church of Ephesus, and at the time there was a lot of quarrelness among them and backstabbing and gossiping. And this is what Paul's talking about. You can still say a bad joke if you want to. You're not going to go to hell because you said a joke. It doesn't work that way. But your gossip, your slander, on the other hand, yes. That's what he's talking about. Cursing, it would be the same thing, by the way. Instead of speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into him who is the head, that is Christ. Ephesians 4:15. Do not let any unwholesome talk, said that already. I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Ephesians 4:1-3. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, life, and love, and in faith and in purity. Again, specific counsel given to Timothy because everybody was having a problem with Timothy because of his age and the fact he hadn't been doing it for very long. It has nothing to do with you being a certain age. and everything to do with Timmy not having courage. But we all stumble in many ways, but if anyone is never at fault in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check. Likewise, his tongue is but a small part of his body. So if you're right all the time, what this is saying, and I would also say that this comes from James. This one you might want to listen to, since my guess is he hung out with Jesus probably more than the rest of them. You know, the annoying little brother. If you think you're right all the time, then you must be really good at not sinning. Since your tongue is the smallest part of the body here, the suggestion is, well, if you're always right, then I guess you must do nothing wrong. Isn't it funny? Like, I love this snarkiness of James. Do a word study. It's pretty funny. If anyone never has fault in what he says, well, that must be a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check, is how it should be read. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes a great boast. It corrupts the whole person, set the whole course of his life on fire, and is itself on fire by hell. My brothers, this should not be. This also, well, if anyone speaks, he should do it as one speaking the very words of God, 1 Peter 4:11. And I would say this about that. If Peter's telling you this, you probably should listen to it, because if anybody opened his mouth and inserted foot on a regular basis, it was definitely Peter. So at some point, Peter figured this out. And hopefully none of us are the same people when we're in our 60s than we were in our 20s or 30s. You change, you adapt, you grow, hopefully. If not, yeah. Repent, rebuke, and forgive. Luke 17, 1 through 10, basically. I just gave you a synopsis of it. Okay, do we want to keep going? Because I didn't really start till almost 7:30. So I have 15 more minutes. Or I can stop now and we can not do this next week. You sure? Remember, I didn't write this, so you definitely can't be upset with me. Well, you can. I don't really give a crap. We tend to think communication is mostly about information, but it's also largely about our emotions and how information impacts them. So being aware and comfortable with emotions and aware of our body is important. Let me just say this again, because we tend to think communication is mostly about information, but it is also largely about our emotions and how information impacts our emotions. So being aware and comfortable with your emotions and aware of your body is actually vastly important in having healthy communication. One, the ability to feel is God-given. So it's not that emotions are a problem, it's being controlled by your emotions that's a problem. Your emotions are there. They were given to you by God as a temperature check, but they are not supposed to lead. They never were. Spirit, the mind, your emotions. The emotions influence all the other parts. He created us and said, it is good. He made values, and he enjoys that part of us. Feelings are not the problem. They are a part of being made in the image of a very passionate God. In the scripture, we see God has feelings, but they are tempered by the more superior parts of his nature. Feelings are not the real or deepest you, as the enemy would have you believe, or the world. Rather, they are only a part of you. You can think about feelings, judge or ignore them, enjoy them, or choose to do other than you feel, but we are more than our feelings or should be. We are more than our drives, and we are actually more than our experiences. Feelings are often temporary. They come and go. I might feel different in 10 minutes or 10 weeks, or if I get some sleep, or if I eat, or I pray, get new information, exercise, or I connect with someone. And the most easiest way to feel this one is simple. Somebody you love says, hey, can you help me move next weekend? You're like, yeah, sure, of course I can. And then Saturday morning comes up. You probably don't feel the same way you did when you said that. That's an easy one. How about you get up, you're in a great mood, but on the ride to work, someone upsets you, and by the time you get to work, now you're grumpy, and it's only been 20 minutes. Feelings change. They're not solid, and they're really a piss-poor direction finder. Like, if that's how you set your course by how you feel, I guarantee your life is a mess, or sheltered or hidden. But people who have their feelings in charge usually have a long wreckage. It's everybody else's fault but mine. Feelings are often temporary, blah, blah, blah. Feelings are not always logical or reasonable, but oftentimes they can be logical and reasonable. It's for you to know the difference. A mature, healthy person, well-balanced, again, can find these differences. An unhealthy person finds some crutch on which they don't have to repair, grow, mature, or change. That's how you know a healthy person and a mature person versus someone who wants to be a victim and wants to have crutches for their problems. I.e., being on the, what do they call it now? I want to make sure I don't upset anybody. Being neurodivergent is not a crutch, it's a gift. I am so frustrated by people who use it as a, woe is me because I'm neurodivergent. No, awesome you, because you're neurodivergent. You can do things other people can't do. Stop focusing on what you can't do, trying to get people to feel sorry for you. Instead, use the gifts that God has given you, because I'm just going to say, if you've not seen X-Men, where like the next level of mutants were better than regular Homo sapiens, I'm not saying neurodivergent people are better. I'm just saying we might be the next phase in the evolution of humanity. Thank you very much. You know who you are. My people. The reasons behind a feeling may not make sense to you, but the feeling is real for you or the individual, and it can be very powerful. If you value yourself or the person, then you must value the depth of the feeling, because it's being genuinely experienced, though you may not like it or understand it. What does that mean? Okay, so for some of us who are a little emotionally deficient, it's a hard step. It literally means, regardless of how illogical someone is acting, how unreasonable they are behaving, or how just plain like, I don't really have time for this, your mode you're in, you need to pause and sit down and say, I see something's upset you. What's going on? Now, some days you're going to be good at this. Other days you're not. I have them like at 60-40 right now. 40 on the good days, 60 on the bad. But, you know, a mature, healthy person works on their weaknesses. And so if you know where you're weak in this, maybe you're too emotional and nobody wants to connect with you because you feel unsafe to them. The other side of it is, if you're overly emotional with no logic, no reason, no ability to control that, you're not a safe person for people who can. And so it's not that they don't like you. You probably are just hard to be around. In fact, the truth might be, I love this person, but they stress me out. Like every time, it's always drama. It's always something. Which is right? Which is wrong? Have patience for those of you who feel, those of you who have problems controlling your emotions. When your friends are asking, take the time or ask for the time to compose yourself so that you can communicate what's going on inside of you. Oftentimes, emotional people, and it's a defensive mechanism and it's okay, but I would encourage you to try to get out of it. They'll reply in a snarky manner or a defensive manner, which sets the other person off as well. And so somebody in that scenario needs to be responsible for their emotions. Oftentimes, it's going to be your D's and your C's that typically do that, and your I's and your S's are challenged by it. Again, know your personality types, know your friends, know their personality types. They're going to tell you, and if they tell you, I don't like being confined to a label, they've just told you who they are on the disc scale anyway, so it works out. It works. And when you interact with people, not that they're not deeper than that, not that they're not broader than that, but a basic personality type is what it is, and we all have them. And if you want people to know who you are and to see you, then allow them to filter through that way, whether it's Briggs-Myers or a DISC or whatever else system they want to use. Myers-Briggs, sorry, I'm dyslexic. Doesn't matter. Know your family, know your friends, educate yourself. Part of the problem with Americans is we just go around the world thinking that we can just skate by and everything's going to be okay. Learn to educate yourself on things like, I don't know, relationships, unless your parents were stellar at it. Like everybody thinks the world revolves around them and everybody else is at fault. Probably you're not managing yourself. Would be if you have a long history, find the common denominator. If every 3 or 4 years or 5 years or every year, everything's blowing up around you and people don't want anything to do with you, the problem's not them. The problem is probably you. Whether you can't manage your emotions, you don't know how to communicate them, doesn't matter. At some point, it's better to handle that now. I have aunts who never did that, who died that way. Whether they were alcoholics or drug addicts, doesn't matter. Or whether they died as a result of being alcoholics or drug addicts, and they spent 50, 60 years not getting healthy, not getting help, but getting offended when someone suggested they needed it, and then they died that way. I don't want that for anybody I love. If we can get healthy, let's get healthy. If everything Jesus said is promised and it's true, then let's tap into it. Like I read these Proverbs, and then I watch how Jesus interacts with people. And how many of you know he knows exactly who to interact with which way? There are times where Jesus is so loving, so caring. It's like, oh man, it's beautiful. It's almost magical. And then there's other times where he literally does this. I read one of them. Generation of vipers, sons of a snake. We got another word just like it. He's saying the same word to an agrarian group of people. He basically told the Pharisees they're sons of bitches. And if you think that's still being a hippie, he tells King Herod, you go tell that fox he can come find me. He tells the king, although not a very good one and definitely questionable whether or not he had deserved it. Doesn't matter. He tells the king, in an agrarian culture, he calls him basically a slimy, sneaky coward. That's a stonable offense back then. Your hippie Jesus did that. And there's several others. Jesus knew how to reach people. They didn't always like it. This is the same Jesus, and we've talked about this 3 times now in this whole teaching series, where he looks at people, he's like, you've heard it said that if you sleep with your neighbor's wife, you've committed a sin. I tell you, if you're even thinking about it, you've committed a sin. Jesus said this. Hippie-loving Jesus takes it up like 10 notches, not 1, 10. From the act to the thought. And you think he doesn't have a problem with sin, you're high as a kite. He does. It's just the heart's more important. Communicating is more important. Reaching people is more important. There are 4 main emotions: glad, sad, mad, and afraid, according to Dan Farley. We can argue that. And I would argue it, actually. But your head often will lie to you about what you're feeling, but your body usually won't, and neither will the Holy Spirit. An easy one for that is your fight or flight emotion. A lot of times we feel a fight or flight in response to something that's uncomfortable, something that equates to an experience we had in our past or something just horrible. Your body has memories for tragic moments that your subconscious has forgotten. Certain people, specifically manic people, tend to have a celebration that they're not aware of. And it's kind of interesting when you can diagnose that in yourself and figure out, oh, wait, every year at Thanksgiving, I am miserable and depressed, and I don't know why. It's a great holiday. I get to stuff my belly. And then you start looking at the past and researching, you find out, oh, that's the day, that's the week that and for me, I'll tell you what it was. In September, I came home from a youth thing, and my mom and dad were gone, and my cousin was there, and for a week, we didn't know what happened. My cousin just made sure we didn't burn down the house. I mean, we had a lot of boys. And we were really aggressive boys, so it was smart to keep us from burning down the house, keep us fed. A week later, my dad came home, and the very next week was Thanksgiving, and the associate pastor invited us to his house, and that's when I learned that my mom and dad were going to get a divorce. And I threw up, like, horribly. Like, I got so nauseous, I just threw up. Every Thanksgiving since then, I pretty much hated. And I didn't figure that out until about maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Same thing with Christmas. Christmas was bad because Christmas was stressful. And then for me, coming from not just a broken home, but a fragmented, fractured home, it was 4 different stops on Christmas Day because I had to keep all the grandparents happy. I have a father, a stepfather with a new wife, stepmother, and then my mother and stepfather. So it was like you got to go around to all these places and then hit the grandparents if you could. It was like there's no fun on Christmas. It was get all the rushing around done until you got home and you could self-soothe from all that stress. But I couldn't understand why I was acting out, and I would act out at Christmas. I got miserable and grumpy. And I love Christmas music. Like, I love the holiday, but like, how many times have we put up a Christmas tree in your life? 3 times? 4? Maybe? I hate it. I don't put lights up. I don't do anything. Tinsel's distracting. I can't stand it. But I couldn't figure out why I hated it so much and why I got grumpy and why Christmas carols in particular, the theology of them sucks, and I used to love picking on it. It was my outlet for dealing with it. but it didn't help people. But I felt justified in my emotions. Now, I could go down that road. Heck, I got a ton of them I could go down if I really wanted to. Or I can say, what do those experiences build in me? Who am I as a result of those experiences? Am I the byproduct or am I refined? Do I let my trauma define me? Or do I let my confidence and my overcoming define me that God gave me and promised me? Which is it? We get to pick one. And whichever one you pick is fine. Like, at the end of the day, I don't give a crap. But one is healthy for you, one is not. And your emotional responses tell you which one. If you cannot manage your emotions and your emotions manage you, there's some toxicity or some unhealing that needs done. At the very least, you need to learn to manage your thoughts. And I know some of you are like, oh, I champion my feelings. You should. You just shouldn't be led by them. There's not a single healthy person on the face of the planet. And I know I won't say a certain age group will defute this because they don't like success according to the American standard of success. If you want to be successful, i.e. have money in the bank, have a future, not be stressed out, not have drama, actually be able to stay at a job and fulfill a job, have healthy kids, have a healthy life, have a good retirement, own a house, if those are ideals of success, you won't find a single person who's accomplished that well and is still overly emotional. You won't find it. You might find in a married couple, one is overly emotional and the other one's not. And I guarantee you the one that's not is probably making the money. Sorry. Dave Ramsey. Get mad at him. Get mad at him. And if you think Dave Ramsey's an idiot, oh boy, you're going to have an interesting life. You can have excuses for being toxic emotionally, or you can overcome it. Those are your choices. But don't expect everybody to celebrate a toxic emotional person. It won't happen. There's nothing healthy about it. There's nothing desirable about it. There's nothing fun about it. And really, no one wants to be around it, except for other emotionally toxic people. So they just get together and self-soothe everything. The more hidden your feelings are from yourself and others, the less alive you are. So this is my favorite part. These are the people who are like me. You have emotions. You may not like them. You may not even want to acknowledge them. But you got them. And you have a choice. You're either their bitch or they're yours. Which you're going to choose. You're going to be led by it, controlled by it. And by that I mean you acknowledge that you have them, but you just want to act like you don't. And so, you come off cold, aloof, inconsistent, arrogant, mean. Which is just about as much fun as someone who's toxic in their emotions. There's a middle ground for all this. The middle ground is I know me and I know what triggers me, and nobody else's. My triggers aren't your responsibility, and your triggers aren't mine. My triggers are my responsibility. The things I get emotional about are my responsibility. If it's like this, how many of you are vegan or remotely vegan? It's okay, I'm not going to pick on you if you're vegan. Do you like vegetables? I love them. What's this, vegan and vegetarian? You're vegetarian. If we have a huge cookout, would you expect me to signal out a portion of the grill for you for your black bean burgers, let's say? Or would you just bring black bean burgers and ask for it? Which would you choose? Right. I would consider that not only honorable, I would consider that mature and healthy. But there are people who will lose their crap because you didn't prefer them over anything else. Our emotions can be like that. Our triggers can be like that. We expect everyone to manage what upsets us. That's arrogant presumption. That is entitlement, and 100% immature. And so we need to be able to identify those things in ourselves so that we can manage those things, because you're going to have emotions. You're going to have feelings about certain situations. There are going to be triggers all around you all the time. And if you're going to have conversation and relationship, those must be managed inside. That is an inside job. Now, having said that, relationally, those who love you might actually go out of their way for you. That's good too. But don't demand it. Don't expect it. People do it when they love you because it's part of who they are. It is a learning process, which means there has to be a space for communication. Oh, I'm so sorry. I said that word. You said that word. It upset me. And now we have our communication started, don't we? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was just a word. I don't understand why it offends you. Explain it to me. Because it's bad. Not good enough. Explain it to me. Talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. I'll destroy you. Reach me. Don't talk down to me. And no one should talk down to you. The attempt at communication is explain it to me. Why? I don't get it. Help me understand. If people are doing that and you're still increasing in your emotion, let me help you out too. Being loud isn't a sign you're right. It's a sign you're offended and you've lost control and you're immature. Loud does in no way, shape, or form mean valid. And certain personality types, it literally means, wow, you're nuts. So yelling at people doesn't work. Over-talking them is disrespectful and it really just tells somebody, oh, you don't really care what I think or what I feel. Okay, it's all about you. Gotcha. I now no longer hear anything that's coming out of your mouth for the next, till you're done, I guess. But you manage you. You come to the table. You talk to each other, not at each other. You listen as well as you speak. Imagine the marriages that could be saved. Imagine the friendships and the families if we would just approach it with, I prefer you more than my opinion. And let me help you out with something else. Just because someone disagrees with me doesn't mean they don't like you either. I know that's a new thing the last 10, 15 years. It's not valid. Disagreement is how things are born, how things are discovered. It's actually good to have discourse so that you can come back together and have healing. Again, mature, healthier people know this. This was done for years and years and years. It's a skill that's been lost, so don't upset. I have so many more notes. All right, we'll just call it a day there. Any questions? Because it's not like this is something that is things most people do. Most people don't often like it. The book that I recommend everybody read, there's 2 actually, specifically for men. There's 2. Women should read it too. I just don't like to explain, hey, it was written back in the 1800s and it says, as a man thinketh, it should be as people thinketh. But, I just don't feel like going through that, so I don't. But as a man thinketh is, I don't know, the premier book you can read that puts responsibility back on you in all things. One of my favorite quotes is, a man's mind might be likened unto a garden. If you don't plant intentionally, weeds grow up, and it'll reproduce in their kind. But if you plant intentionally, fruit will spring up, and it will reproduce in their kind. And then the other one is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. But those 2 books really balance a person. They're beginning of Stoicism, and I find that Stoicism, not being a Stoic, little s, which means people misunderstand that. They think they're educated, but they're not, especially this, when they think that means denying your emotions. But to be a Stoic means exploring my emotions, but not being ruled by them and accepting life as it is with a hope of something greater than myself, which I would consider Christian. Questions? In the middle of the argument, you went, it's an abbreviation of the word faggot. Not to me. I know that. I've had to explain it to 4 different people. I actually went to check, and I checked with a bunch of people my age going, when we were in sports or we were in the military, didn't we say that to just encourage one another? Yeah. Did you think I meant you were gay? No. And we weren't allowed to say bad words. That changed, yeah, at some point. And with all due respect, and I apologize for this, I left the country and came back, and it was a different world. Like, I was gone for almost 10 years, and lots changed. That's all it takes. And then I went to other countries where I saw how things really were bad and came back here and heard everybody whining and basically ignored it because I'd been in bad countries. I'd been around people who were oppressed. I had been in communism. I had rescued people, saved people. Then I came back and found out I was a misogynistic jerk for joining the military who craved power and was a narcissist. When all we were doing was protecting the innocent, which is the only reason we joined. I don't care about the political agenda. But if I go see a bunch of children who are going to be killed or bombed, and I go run into a schoolhouse and I grab as many as I could before that thing explodes, how does that make me a narcissist, misogynistic, or in any way arrogant? And I hear a bunch of cowards who wouldn't lift a finger to save anybody chastise me. That was hard. So I just ignored half the stuff I was hearing when I came back. Like, are you kidding me right now? You've not done a damn thing to change this world. Shut up. And I had to get over that. And then, of course, all the psychological issues you got to deal with and stuff to get to a place where you could be human again. We all come from different backgrounds. But none of us really know why we think the way we think. And if you make a judgment on somebody, you're as guilty as whomever you've accused of doing that. If you don't investigate and you don't ask, you might make an ass of yourself and of somebody else. Assume, I think is the word. Best if we just don't do that. Let's learn to talk first and to listen well. Listen for cues, and we'll get into that next week, but there are cues you can listen for in a person. Ask as many questions. I don't care how upset they get. Ask your questions, and the more they upset they get, and I'll teach you this skill, if you really want to get to the heart of an issue, sometimes you got to cause disruption. Sand in the shell, the old Jewish rabbis call it. And it's a really good, method to help somebody grow and yourself. The other thing that you should also be looking at, specifically right now, if you're on the left, I would encourage you, if a cut is healed and there's a scab, you shouldn't keep picking at that scab. I don't know if you know anything about infection, but that's how it starts. You will really, really cause an issue if you continue to pick at scabs. They won't heal. And if you're on the right, just stop being so Trumpy. Pardon? Yes, James Allen, As a Man Thinketh. He actually has 99 books, I think, or 24 books. I bought them all for $19.99. And they're fantastic. Every book James Allen has ever written is really good if you're in that mindset where you're like, I'm responsible for me and I'm going to change. And I tell people about the book, and how I know they really want to change is if they actually get it and read it. So, yes, 90% of what I say to everybody is a test. Sorry. And I'm never going to tell you when the test is, because that would defeat the purpose. But if you're interested in changing you'll take the first steps. If it means go on Amazon and spending 99 cents on a book, and you aren't willing to do it, do you really want to change? It's a great book. It changed my life. I had a teacher, I told some of you this, I had a teacher give it to me when my parents got divorced. He just saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and when he gave it to me, I thought he was an idiot, and I didn't read it until many, many years later, and upon reading it, it changed me. I realized that I had blamed everybody for everything, and all that responsibility was on me. Like, it wasn't that bad things didn't happen, it's that I didn't have to choose to view them that way. And one of the aspects of faith that you guys probably know this is in the midst of, like, look, not to whine about it again, but I got shot, I got cancer, I had botched operations, now Patty has cancer. We got to find somewhere else to meet because we got no more money. And I could look at this and woe is me. Oh, the enemy's beating us up and attacking us, and take authority over it and all that other crap, which all other people do that too. Or I take a look at it and in faith say, at the end of this journey, there's going to be something really amazing here. I hate it right now. And I'll be honest, I hate everything about the last 3 years. And if I wanted to be angry, I feel pretty justified in it, but I'm not going to be. But I recognize that in my anger, it was affecting people who love me. And so I went and got the help. Some people weren't patient enough to let me get the help. Some people just got mad and offended and took it as their reason to go. And that's cool. They get to do them. But for those who acknowledged it and actually walked with me, it told me that they loved me, and they were willing to acknowledge the fact that, hey, you all right? Because you're not being you. One of them was your wife. And, of course, she said at the end of my getting help journey, but it was still valid. Ashley would be another one. Jen Wild. Ironically, it was most of my female friends. Most of my male friends know me enough to respect that if I say, I'm fine, they don't want to press it. Which is probably smart. But at the end of this journey, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, this will make sense. It doesn't have to right now. And I could be a victim of circumstance or a victim of life, or I can just say, I'm going to conquer everything in front of me right now. I'm gonna beat it. If it meets me head on, I'm gonna hit it head on. If it means I gotta climb, I'm gonna climb. And I know that's prior service stuff and everything, but like nothing's gonna stop me or hold me back except for me. And in faith, I trust that I'll get it. I'll figure it out. It may be 20 years from now when I meet the one person who needs the one piece of advice. Worth it. But if I measure it based off of my emotions and my comfortability, shit, life sucks. So why would I measure it based off of my emotions and my comfortability? Why would I not trust the Lord, trust the good things that have come about? I know me better than I ever knew me. I know what I'll accept. I know the compromises I've made. And I know what I won't compromise ever again. That's worth it just there. Growing closer to the Lord in an uncomfortable situation, you can't. No, there's no price on that one. 2019 was that for all of us, my friends. It's 2023. You still licking your wounds because of the COVID? Because you got locked up? Because things didn't work out the way you wanted them to? Maybe it's time to grow up. Maybe it's time to trust God. Maybe it's time to find joy in the small things. Because we're still speaking out of our pain. We're still easily offended. We're still easily hurt. This should have transformed us. This should have transformed the church. No, it didn't then, but it can now. And so if all these uncomfortable things, if everything that we believed in didn't measure out, if the prophets were wrong, which they were, guys, your majority of your big light prophets all got it wrong. And they should be repenting. They should be on their knees repenting. And there's still moronic, there are still people who 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, and they're still blindly following. Oh, Trump's going to win this time. He's not. He shouldn't run. It should be the worst politically, just from a political standpoint, it's the worst friggin' move the Republicans could ever make if they actually want to win. Because half the Republican Party can't stand him. How do you know that? Because every single person Trump endorsed but 2 lost in the midterms. And I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but and it's my football, and I do love it. So it doesn't work. It will never work. He's not going to win. And then it will happen. His son will run. The prophets go, that's what we meant. Yeah, of course. Now that's what you meant. But that's not what you said when you said it. So Christianity failed us. The big speakers failed us. The big churches failed us. The money failed us. The lights, the glamour, the music. But you know who didn't? Easy answer. Squirrel of Jesus. Which one do you think it is? Squirrel, that's right. Squirrels got fat. They were beautiful. No, Jesus, man. And if we're going to represent him to the world, because that still is, last I checked, the mission, then we need to learn how to present it. But first, we got to heal thyself. Most of us are still in adaptation mode, not thriving mode. We're not in our natural state. We're in our adaptive phase. And those of you who've been here for over 10 years, you have no excuse to accept your adaptive phase as normal. You know better. That is me as a pastor chastising you just a little bit. But loving you too, because you're beautiful people and you've done really well under some really amazing circumstances. As for the rest of you, let's do this together. Let's get out of it. Let's pull our heads out of our collective butts. Let's learn how to talk to one another first, as in the house, as a family. And I know for some of you that means you got to go think about how you want to respond. Then go think about it. That's fine. Some of us, we fire off as quick as we can. You know, some people, conversations like a gunfight. Who draws it first? And there's other people who just want to we talked about it 2 weeks ago, and I took some notes. That's okay too. I'm okay, but I'm okay going backwards. Like if that's what it takes. Like if it was 2 weeks ago, then great, let's talk about it. That's cool. It was 2 weeks ago. I mean, I don't remember what I said 2 weeks ago because I don't remember what happened yesterday. But by all means, refresh my memory. We'll talk about it. But let's do it. Let's stop avoiding it. But let's do it with honor, respect, integrity, and love. People of the kingdom.
I feel so seen.
You are. I see you. It's the best part of that movie. You know the movie I'm talking about? With the little blue people, not Smurfs, the other one, Avatar.
Oh, yes.
It's the same thing, basically. When that phrase, I see you, is one of the best phrases of any movie I've ever seen because it means so much more deep in their language, right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Has anybody not seen Avatar? Not seen Avatar? You saw Avatar 2 with me last week. One or two? I don't care. Either one. Have you not seen one? Oh my gosh, we need a movie night.
We do need a movie night. I mean, it made
It's a good movie, though. Listen, so there are these. I'm not going to go into the whole backstory because really, basically, it means I see you means I see who you are. I see the real you amidst of all the. I said it to you the other day. Well, it's nice to see you. It means you were seen, you were known, everything about you I love and I accept, and I love that it's you. It's a deep emotional statement. It does, almost. I love you. Have compassion means to love someone as if they came from the same womb. I love Hebrew language. But then again, I embrace metaphor. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you so much for this amazing group of people, Lord God. I thank you for challenges. I thank you for successes. I thank you for failures, the greatest teacher of all. I thank you for pain and discomfort and for those moments of peace and tranquility. I ask that you would teach us, guide us, and help us. In Jesus' name we pray.